If you look at Olympic sprinters, they are some of the most muscularly well-developed and powerful-looking athletes on the planet. And so it kind of makes sense that you would think other athletes with a lot of muscle would just naturally be very fast. You think, hey, you're really strong, you can probably put a lot of force into the ground and move really fast. That makes sense. But a lot of times, bodybuilders and powerlifters and even Olympic weightlifters tend to not be very fast, especially once you get towards top speed. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about it, talk about how you should be training if you want to get faster. One of the reasons that muscle mass doesn't help you a lot when you're sprinting has to do with sliding filament theory. And very simply put, this just means that your individual muscle fibers are made up of pieces that slide across each other and stick together like Velcro. And this results in two things. One, the contraction takes a signal from the nervous system, a chemical release, and it also takes the time for the pieces to slide across each other. And this results in the contraction taking more and more time, especially as the amount of force gets higher and higher. Another outcome of this is that you are stronger in certain positions where more of the Velcro is touching. If you put half the Velcro together, you can rip it off pretty easy. And if you put all of it together, it's going to be twice as strong. Muscle works in the same way, meaning that as more of those pieces overlap, you're going to get stronger. The reason that these two things are important is because on one hand, as the speed of running gets faster and faster, your ground contact time will approach about 150 milliseconds and the speed of a maximum muscle contraction will be about 300, which means you're going to take more time to contract the muscle than your foot is going to spend on the ground. This means that your muscles can't produce all of the necessary force. They can produce some of it while you're in the air and while you're accelerating. Yes, that can really help. But when you get on the ground, your muscles are forced to rely on the help of the tendons. And tendons are a smooth, elastic tissue that are going to absorb in the eccentric phase. You're going to land. There's an amortization phase that happens very quickly. And then there's a concentric phase, which is where energy is released. And the reason it's important that you're stronger in certain positions is when you're running, you get to stay in some of those more advantageous positions. You don't have to be with your hip below your knee like you are in a powerlifting style squat. You can just keep your hip above your knee and be in that stronger position to start. And so because of the characteristics of muscle tissue, it's very helpful for acceleration and for force production, but it can't do everything by itself. So not only do you need muscular power, you also need the ability to utilize your tendons well, and you also need the timing for muscle relaxation. So just like we said, the muscle takes time to contract, it also takes time for the muscle to relax. And so as you're getting faster and faster, that speed of muscle relaxation becomes a limiting factor. And so you have to be able to relax the hamstring faster for the knee to come up faster. And if not, then you're pulling against yourself, and now all of that muscle is working against you. So yes, there are advantages to being very strong and very muscular, but they're limited because of the properties of muscle and how much you're going to rely on other things like timing and plyometric development. Those things are much more valuable. And some people will say Olympic weightlifters do better because they're more explosive and they're usually much better at the relaxation component because of having to get under the bar in an Olympic lift. But do you know who really does do the best at sprinting? Jumpers. Now, there is still a difference in ground contact time between jumping and sprinting. Jumping is going to have a longer ground contact time, but it's still much more similar to sprinting. And these athletes are usually so well developed from a muscular standpoint and a plyometric standpoint that a lot of jumpers will be able to get into a 100-meter dash and do just fine. And there's other things that make jumpers really good sprinters as well. One of them being usually they have some experience sprinting and they have a very favorable strength to weight ratio. And these are other things that just bodybuilding and weightlifting alone can't get you. One is they have a little bit more of that technique of sprinting, and it is an advantage to be light if you can still be strong. And if you're a long sprinter like the 200 and 400 and you start to add in metabolic conditioning and race strategy, now all of a sudden that gap gets even wider and wider. So how does this inform how we train as sprinters? Well, the most important thing is not to ignore weights or to ignore plyos or to say any one thing isn't important. It's just to remember what the most important thing is for developing good sprinters. And that is the skill of sprinting, of regularly accelerating hard with good technique and also getting into good quality max velocity work. And the reason these things are so important is because we have to remember you are developing a skill. Yes, when we think of Olympians, they are incredibly physically gifted, but they have also developed a skill and a timing and a rhythm to sprinting that a lot of athletes haven't. If you're a basketball player, you're almost always going to practice shooting during a workout. The reason for this is that it is one of those skills that you can't fake when you get into a game. When you're getting to max velocity sprinting, that is something that cannot be faked when we're talking about really strong and explosive athletes. And if this sounds like something that interests you and you like this video, feel free to check out the rest of my channel. A ton of my videos are all about sprinting and getting faster. As always, subscribe, comment, and have a nice day.